You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. It's brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strongest group and closest partner, MTN everywhere you go, Star Assurance, your solid partner, Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa, Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years, Duraplast, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplast flows, Duraplast goes, water flows. St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. Hoptel, everything you. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on the MTN to join. And Magdan Aviation, your dependable private aviation request solved. You just make the request, and that's it. My guest this morning on this very special edition, Yao Edupoku is Chairman, Competitive African Rice Platform, Ghana chapter under the ECOWAS Rice Observatory, Abuja, ECOWAS Secretariat. Victor Opong Ejay is National Chairman, Ghana National Association of Poultry Farmers. Tony Sanaya is CEO of Hosman Shoes, Hosman. Gideon Abuaji is Chief Operating Officer of Dragon Group of Companies and Agribusiness Expert. Alistair Jemate is Public Affairs Manager, Blue Skies Products, Ghana. Abraham Kumsin is Secretary General, Ghana Federation of Labour. And Dr. Priscilla Chumesi Bafo, a Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Ghana. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so very much for your time this morning, and welcome to our special edition of Newsfile.
Hello, good morning.
Great. Now, let me begin this way by giving you a certain peek into what is relevant for this conversation. According to our Finance Minister, Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta, on average, Ghana's import bill exceeds $10 billion annually. And this is accounted for by a diverse range of items that include iron, steel, aluminium, sugar, rice, fish, poultry, palm oil, cement, fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, toilet roll, toothpick, fruit juice, among others. These are things we actually have the power and capacity and expertise to do right here in Ghana. In 2020, rice was Ghana's third highest import, with a whopping import value of $391 million, only behind refined petroleum and car imports. Now look at the chart there. Refined petroleum, $662 million. Cars, mostly second-hand cars, $492 million. Rice, third, $391 million. We have delivery trucks, $283 million, and coated flat rolled iron, $273. I'm sure you know too well that your tomato is not there, tomato paste. You know that your toothpick has not been mentioned in there. Importation of chicken, total 683,709 tons. Brazil, US, and the EU are where we are getting them from in the quantities that you see on your screen. According to the Ghana Association of Poultry Farmers, 80% of poultry ventures in Ghana have folded up. Note that 80% of poultry ventures in Ghana have folded up due to importation of frozen chicken. All you need is stop the importation and you keep these businesses alight. Nigeria took a decision, I think 2020, 2021, and they are reaping some very good fruits. We'll share some of the success stories with you. In 2015, actually, they began a ban, on rice imports. And there was a reduction in the imports by 98.4% in 6 months. That's how much success they made. Nigeria's rice imports in metric tons, that's what you're looking at. Yep. That's right, you're looking at 2021. And now look at the figure for 2022. It's only 15. In 2021, June, July, it was 957. In 2022, it's only 15. That is an attempt to give you a certain perspective. And as I began, I introduced you to the fact that Ghana imports an average of 15 million items of used clothing. 15 million items of used clothing from Western countries, with a recent value of the commodity amounting to nearly 249 million United States dollars. This was a research revelation made by the head of fashion department at the Akintinapia Menka University of Skills Training and Entrepreneurial Development, who was also advocating or is advocating the increase in taxes of imported used clothing to discourage that. I'm talking about Dr. Daniel Danso. We have been informed that Ghana's import of essential food commodities has reached an average of 2 billion each year. That's according to the Ministry of Finance. Our import of essential food commodities has reached an average of $2 billion each year, according to the Ministry of Finance. The key foodstuffs include rice, poultry, sugar, tomatoes. A chunk of the import, this is what accounts for it. And data from the ministry indicates that between 2017 and 2020 alone, the country reportedly spent between $845.9 million to $2 billion on the importation of rice, poultry, and tomatoes, among a few others. I'll share some of the other figures with you, but I hope this brings some perspectives to what we are talking about this morning and awakens you to what role you may have to play in the process. In 2017, our president declared a Ghana beyond age. Soon after, there was some blueprint that was put in place. How are we following that? What success have we made in this regard? So, let's begin with my guests. First of all, I'd like you to tell me the success stories in your various fields of practice and expertise. So let's begin with you, Chairman of the Competitive Africa Rice Platform, Ghana chapter, Yao Dupoku.
Good morning to your viewers and to you. It is a welcoming and a warm feeling being here once more to talk about how we can motivate and produce locally to feed the country. I'm happy to be here this morning. Yes, Samson, we've been talking and talking and talking. It makes us feel like we are a country that likes talking. We talk more than we do. And every time we push it to the third party. So we are not the one to be blamed, whether politician or the retailer. Everyone talks about the third party being the one to be blamed. And so we keep on exacerbating our situation. Currently, if you look at the economy, which has grown from about 6 billion to 40 billion and beyond, you can see that almost everything that we have in this system is imported. Interestingly, I was in Tanzania last month, and I was surprised to learn that they don't even speak English. They speak Swahili, and it is all over the country. And when you go to their shops, you see made in East African products there. And an interesting question came up about Tanzanians who came to Ghana, and they said, we went to ShopRite and Accra Mall, but 90% of the items that we found there were imported. How is Ghana faring? Very insightful question. Samson, it is time that we take the bulls by the horn and do what we need to do, the needful thing that we need to do, else the economy will not be able to be sustained.
Right. But first things first. A couple of years ago, we had you on the show, and I remember after our discussion about how rice that had been produced was getting rotting, and there were no, buyers and so on, how our discussion got quite, passionate and intense, particularly off air. And since then, the interactions that we have had about our local industry. How is that industry doing now?
Actually, I would say it is moving at a very slow pace, at a snail pace, but we are gradually creating the awareness. For the last 2 years, when you go out there to look for Ghana rice, it was a difficult thing. But this year, it has changed. The scenario has changed.
That's right.
It is because people have been made aware, and now they look out for Ghana rice instead of the imported rice. That is some interventions that came out of government, which is helping to stem the tide. One of those interventions is that government said now you have to come for import license before you bring in rice. And then we are not allowing the rice to cross the border. I mean, not milled rice, but paddy rice, which our cousins, the Nigerians, are picking from here and creating an artificial shortage. The farmer is happy, but the local is not happy because we cannot get it here. But in all, we have done a very good job. This time around, though you don't find it on the streets, but if you look out for, you may get the Ghana rice.
Right. Do you remember the year we had this discussion where rice was going bad without buyers?
I remember very well. I came here crying, and you guys took it up.
I mean, you remember which year it was?
I think about 2018.
You're correct. Since then, I have made sure my home, there's no foreign rice.
Thank God.
My staff, they have also come to like it that at the end of the year, the bags of rice you get is not foreign rice.
Great.
So there's something that we can do consciously and it will work, right?
This is what we are pushing towards. And to tell you the good news that you asked me for, two things has happened on the private end. One is the launching of the Competitive African Rice Platform, which seeks to bring all the rice stakeholders along the value chain together. This was conceived by the ECOWAS Rice Observatory, which is looking at rice production in the West African sub-region, because we realize that every year we import in excess of $5 billion worth of rice into West Africa. Ghana is a major importer. And so ECOWAS are taking it up and set a secretariat in Abuja. And they are now launching country to country. And in Ghana, they've succeeded in bringing all of us together, including institutions like the FDA, CSIR, GIDA, Ghana Rice Interprofessional Bodies, private Peasant Farmers Association. All of us have come together, and now we have one common voice. And this is good enough because now we can reach out to government and tell government what we want.
So we'll get into the details of what it will take to let you guys take the commanding heights as far as the production of rice in this country is concerned. Of course, there are some issues that some, patrons have. We will also look at them as well. So let's find out how the poultry industry is also doing. Victor Pongeje, National Chairman of the Ghana Association of Poultry Farmers. What are the success stories that we can talk about?
Thank you very much, Samson. I'm grateful to be here this morning. And I think it is an opportunity to let every Ghanaian know about what's going on in the poultry industry. Let me first say that in God's wisdom, before he created man, he made food available. So it is always important that everyone on this earth have access to food. So when you look at definition of food security by FAO, it talks about affordability, accessibility. It talks about preference. All these are very important because to sustain a human life is only food and not medicine or something. As the father and founder of medicine, Hippocrates, in his theory, he said, let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food. It tells you that food is very important to human life. Now, coming back to poultry, let me first say that poultry gives the source of protein to human. And every human being is supposed to have 0.8 milligram per body weight per day. But I don't think we are having it because we are not getting enough meat to eat. It's very expensive. At least we should try as much as possible to make it affordable. Poultry, as we speak, I will start by having a brief historical background of poultry in the country. Commercial poultry production started immediately after Ghana attained its independence. And the growth rate was very encouraging, about 20% per annum, because it was introduced by the then President Kwame Nkrumah, because he foresee that in future, looking at the population growth, the domestic chicken cannot give enough of the protein that we need. So the poultry was introduced. And the growth was very good, and it was also giving jobs to the citizenry. Until the 1980s, when Ghana adopted the free trade policy without considering the strategic plan to protect the local the local industry. It allows the importation of frozen chicken into the country. By 1990, the importation took about 70% of the market. And by 2013, it went to 90%. As we speak now, we are not producing 1% of the total imports into the country. If you look at EU data,
1%.
We are not producing 1% of the total imports into the country. Yes. If you look at EU data, you see that for the past years, Ghana has been the leading importer of chicken from EU. And in 2021, about 227,903 metric tons of chicken were imported from EU alone in 2021. The data is there. Now, America and Brazil.
This must be what the president meant when he says that every drop of, is it a bullet or a bomb, affects our pockets, even though it's far away in Ukraine.
Exactly. Because it's alarming. US and Brazil are also contesting at the top that they are the highest exporter of chicken into the country. So, considering this fact, if EU, which is at the third position, brought 227,903 metric tons, and assuming the three countries brought the same figure, it gives you about 683,709 metric tons in 2021 alone. And we are not producing 1% of that figure. So, it means that, and it's so cheap that there's no way the local market can compete with them. Okay, let's go to US. Poultry has impacted US economy from the year, from 2012, it was $265 billion. 2014, it went up to $441 billion. 2016 was 643. And 2018, it was $739 billion. And out of that, you will see that broiler production, they call it chicken. Chicken took about, I would say broiler. Broiler took about 75% of the total economic impact. Layer was about 6%, and turkey 18%. Now, it means that poultry is all about the broiler production. And this is where the EU and the Western world have taken over all the market by dumping their chicken on us at a very cheap price. My concern is that when you travel to any of the Western world, chicken is not as cheap as it is sold here when they bring it here. So I ask myself, what is the reason for that? That you've bought it, you've shipped it, you've paid duties on it, added your margin, and it's still very cheap, even from the country that you brought it. So it is very disturbing, and it has affected the poultry so much so that it has pushed all the poultry farmers to produce eggs. And now the challenging is seen all over. Poultry farmers in the country, about 80% are not in operation as we speak now.
Right. I'd like you to pause there. I will return to be asking you this over this 600,000 metric tons that the three countries contribute in a year to our country, importation of cheap poultry into our chicken into our country, that you cannot do even 1%.
Exactly.
I return to you to find out what needs to be done and by whom. Of course, Mr. Dupoku spoke about the rice industry, and we will find out something that we have discovered may be important to use to try and measure what we can also emulate. The Nigeria example, the ban that they placed and what they are doing presently. And I am shocked to discover that it is a Ghanaian who is behind the success story in Nigeria's Anchor project. They call it the Anchor Borrowers Program, where all you need is to contribute 10% equity. as, it's not only rice for whatever it is, as far as it is about locally produced, products. You get financial help to produce it. And if you even check what is required as collateral and how you can use produce to pay back, and what that story, how it is being told in Nigeria, is there something there that we can also look at? Tony, thank you very much for making time to join us on Newsfile. Okay, Tony Senaya is presently not available. We'll get him back. Gideon Abuaje is Chief Operating Officer of Dragon Group of Companies and agribusiness expert. Gideon, on this subject, where you have your eyes on, when we mention this subject, what is it that you can talk about as your preliminary commentary on this discussion we are having?
Okay, Samson, good morning.
Good morning.
And good morning to the other panelists. I think all this year, my interest has been in the promotion of agro-processing in the country. And being a processor myself and also an industry player, there were challenges that we had earlier on this year. Fortunately for us, we have a little good news, which is that currently we are able to get the raw materials to keep our machines running. And
we are losing you, sir. Okay. Gideon Abuaje, we are losing Gideon Abuaje, but we should be able to re-establish contact with him. And yes, okay, Gideon, I'm told you are back and in clear picture and sound. Can we hear you?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Great. So first of all, tell us what exactly you are talking about, which you say you are getting. Is this supplies also?
All right, it's about soybean meal, soybean as a raw material.
Right.
Early this year, we had a major challenge with the supply, and at the point, almost all our factories were about closing down because we could not raise enough raw materials for production. After the advocacy and the complaints, there were some movements from the government end which puts a lid on the exportation of the raw material. So with time, we were getting a bit of it. We couldn't run at full capacity. Most of my colleagues in the processing industry couldn't run at full capacity. But fortunately, after harvesting this season's crop, and the ban that was placed on soy and maize and some other cereals not being taken out of the country, currently we are able to get the raw material to process. So if I am to say what good news we have or what we've been able to achieve in this sector, then I can say that now with the ban in place, we are able to get enough raw materials to feed our machines. And that's a good news. And I'm hoping that each and every one of us who is into policy, production, supply, will look at helping the Ghanaian industry to thrive. Because when we thrive, we create more employment within the value chain.
All right.
So this is what I can say as an intro for this discussion.
Thank you very much. And you're looking great in your smoke. Right. Then Tony Senayab joins us back. He's CEO of Hosman. Tony, thank you very much. Hello, Tony. Hi, Tony.
Hello, Samson. Good morning.
Great. Right.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We were very excited, particularly using you as an example where, you got a presidential mention in our State of the Nation address, and then people started saying, look, this is what it is. We must patronize our own. What can you say briefly about the story of your sector of this local industry?
All right, sure. Thank you, and good morning to viewers and listeners. What I can say is, in terms of the success story, is that 10, 15 years ago, I would only wear a shirt or a material made during Christmas when my dad would take me to see his tailor and they would sew for me an up and down apparel. But in 2022, the story is different. We have people who wear sewn shirts from Monday to Sunday because we have come to accept that we have quality here in Ghana. And this started, I think, when President Kufuor introduced the policy of Friday wear. It has cascaded just beyond Friday to the whole week. When it comes to shoes, again, when I started, I had people who had doubts, I think because of the perception they had about made in Ghana products. But after experiencing our products and of course other locally made shoes, that perception has gone away. People now have come to accept that we have quality here. So the success story is that with time, Ghanaians have come to believe in products and services that are emanating from Ghana. But the challenge, I'm sure we will discuss that later. But in a whole, I think the reception that we are receiving currently is quite positive.
Mm. We just spoke about the facts, bare facts, that almost 99% of the chicken we are consuming in this country is imported. And our local industry can't even do 1% of what is imported. Do you have an idea of that kind of situation in your industry? How much is the patronage? Is there a way to gauge?
Well, Samson, for us, we have a beautiful problem. The beautiful problem is that we have a demand outstripping supply. So our challenge is capacity. And when I say us, not necessarily horseman shoes, but it cuts across all the people in the technical and vocational industry. When you drive around, you will see tailors, advertisement, tailors wanted, seamstresses wanted, even hairdressers wanted. So we lack enough human capital in terms of skilled labor in our sector. So we are unable to scale up. We do what I call the tabletop, the piecemeal approach. I'm not sure, I don't know the capacity of Latida, the guy you mentioned on your show. I'm sure with consistent mentioning, his demand will go up. But as to whether he can meet the demand on time and even have access as African trade, the African trade is coming up. If we can even look at our neighbors, that's where the conversation should go. Building the capacity of local businesses to be able to meet the demand before we even start talking of cutting imports. We have to be ready in terms of capacity. And our challenge now is that we don't have enough capacity to even meet the local and internal demand.
Okay. I'll return to you to, explore the issue, building capacity. Who must do what? Alistair Jimate is Public Affairs Manager, Blue Skies Products, Ghana. You have been celebrated as one of the good Ghana examples. But over a period now, the story has not been, what was expected, that there will be an upward, trajectory of what you do. Is this the story of blue skies alone, or that's generally what the situation is?
Good morning, Samson, and good morning to our panelists and our viewers and listeners across the globe. I don't think the story is different from the other people in the sector. We are not oblivious of the fact that, as we have been told, that the challenges of food insecurity is older than the physical Jesus Christ, but it was dealt with in the Bible. And if you look at the days of Joseph and the pharaohs, how did they address it? They went back to the soil and they managed to get it addressed. As a business which started in 1997, we started operation in Ghana in 1998 with barely some 35 people. Currently, we speak of a staff population of over 3,000 people working in the factory here in Ghana. We are honored to indicate that we have branches across the globe. So we have factories in South Africa, we have factories in Egypt, we have a factory in Benin, and we have a factory in the UK and a factory in Brazil. Samson, we were the first business to organize a group of farmers to get them a GAP certificate in Ghana, the Good Agricultural Practice Certification, so that we'll be able to buy from them. And I think over the years, we have indicated that it is possible to be done here in Ghana. At least we have put Ghana on the map to indicate that one of our businesses can compete with any other business across the globe. But the truth be told that we have not been deliberate as a people with regards to policies in the agricultural sector. And I'm sure we'll come to the challenges, which will be very soon. But across the industry, there are myriads of challenges. And these challenges do not need rocket science to address. And that's what makes it a bit more worrying, because these are things that we have done before, we are capable of doing, but we have not been very deliberate about them to get them addressed, to improve on our agriculture sector so we can enhance on value addition. We strongly believe that if there will be any success in the sector at all, it will depend on how we think of improving and enhancing productivity and also adding value. We process barely fruits and fruit products for major supermarkets in Europe. And I know the perception out there is that Blue Skies is a juice processing company, which is true, but the juice that you see on the market is less than 5% of the entire business. What we do is we add value to fresh cut fruits and export them to major supermarkets in Europe. So it's an industry with a huge potential, that is if it is supported. So in my preliminary statement, I would say that it is a huge industry with a lot of benefits that has the capacity. But in terms of, I know other sectors who complain of capacity, but in the agriculture industry, we have the capacity. We have the human resource. What is needed is a bit of support to trigger the effects that we want to see, just to make it a robust industry so that it will be able to support this country. So you are talking about a lot of imports. The reason is because in other jurisdictions, there are a lot of subsidies. So it makes farming and agriculture and agribusiness.
Right. We will get to that shortly, to begin to appreciate what the difference is and how we can also make some good progress in that direction. So hold on for me. Thank you. And let me now bring on Abraham Kumsin, Secretary General, the Ghana Federation of Labour, who will talk to us about the issues concerning textiles, which has also, as we are being told, and as you heard from Tony, it is true that many of us, most of us these days, we like to wear, what we call local fabrics. But question is, if you look beneath closely, are they really local fabrics? How is that industry also doing? So let's take a preliminary comment from Abraham Kumsin. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Before I proceed, I want to make reference to the research report by Professor Peter Korte of ISA, University of Ghana. Now, I'll read just a short portion. He's saying that nearly 2 decades after independence, the textile subsector was the major key player in Ghana's industrial sector, contributing significantly to the employment and growth in the economy. However, the subsector, which was once the leader in Ghana's industrial sector, has undergone a considerable decline over the years, due largely to the liberalization programs which made it almost impossible for Ghana's textile products to compete with the cheap imports, particularly from Asia. It is, however, estimated that the few companies that managed to survive operated at just about 5% installed capacity since 1995. Various reasons have accounted for the decline. Some of the major ones mentioned include low demand for local textile products, an influx of second-hand clothing, lack of competitiveness of local textile against imported textiles due to high cost of local textile, which resulted from high cost of production. Now, he said in his report that the textiles industry used to employ some 25,000 people, which accounted for 27% of total manufacturing employment in 1977. However, by 1995, employment within the subsector had declined to a mere 7,000, declining further to 5,000, and by the year 2000, we now have a mere 2,961 persons. A survey of 40 textile garments industries in 2005 also confirmed that the situation is getting worse. So as at now, we have less than 1,000 workers in the industry, from 25,000 in the 70s. We now have just around 1,000. And Samson, this
you said from 25 to just around
25,000 to about 1,000.
1,000, not 10,000.
No.
Okay.
1,000. Now.
Okay.
Now, we have struggled. The workers have, mounted, a lot of campaigns to get government to at least turn its attention to what is happening. Because to grow an economy, you cannot depend on imported products. You can't survive. So you need to encourage whatever it takes for the government to make sure that the local industries grow. They should do it. And I am telling you that government come, government go. And we were making a headway, somehow. But when government change, then they all come with their own way of doing things. And I have observed that people come into politics, take power, with a different objective. Because they know that this is what we can do to grow the industry, this is what we can do to let the economy pick up. They won't do it. They will never have evidence to prove that they will never do it. Look, those who import the raw materials to use it or to process, yeah. But I tell you that the number of taxes that they are paying, raw materials, not finished products, import duty, import VAT, national health insurance, debt fund, COVID levies, net charges, ECOWAS levy, cheapest levy, Ministry of Trade and Industry, 1D, 1F fee, disinfection fee, special import levy, exim levy, inspection fee, AU levy. Look at this. What government is this? And you are doing all this, and how do you expect the local manufacturer to produce and break even? why you must know that these are industries that are creating jobs for your people. From 25,000, now we have around 1,000. And they don't care. Look, I wish that next time, bring somebody from the trade industry and then Minister of Finance, so that we can debate, this issue. They should be there. They should be there to explain certain things. Try to organize another program like this and bring the Minister of Trade and Industry, bring somebody from the Finance Ministry to come and explain why they are behaving the way they are behaving. Look, they are pretending. It's like somebody who is not asleep, you pretend to sleep, you knock and knock and knock and knock, you beat him, he will never wake up. This is what government is doing. They don't care. They don't care. Something I'm telling you, they don't care. Next time, we don't want to talk behind them. I wish that you bring the trade ministry.
Right.
They are all 10 people to come.
Right. So that was actually the agenda, and I can assure you they are watching, they are listening, and there will be another opportunity where these views that you are expressing will be the points of question for them to respond to accordingly. Let me speak to Dr. Priscilla Chumesi Bafo, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Ghana. Many times we have engaged with you on these questions of the economy. You have been very concerned about the employment subsector. From what you are hearing across board, and I invited each guest to begin with their success story. Even in that, imagine what you are hearing, and we are going to go into the deeper questions of what is broken and what has to be fixed. What are you identifying immediately?
Thank you very much, Samson. Good morning, and good morning to my fellow panelists and listeners. Indeed, when you look at the issues that have been outlined right here, you can tell that the challenges are the same, regardless of the sector that you are looking at. And the bottom line really is that as a country, we have not been very intentional about our industrialization drive, and particularly the sources of the growth that we record in this country. So when you listen to blue skies, poultry farmers, these are very low-hanging fruits that as a country, if we are very intentional about creating jobs and adding value to our agricultural produce, these are not very difficult things to do. And so when you ask, what are the major challenges that these practitioners face? A number of factors have been identified, but principally you find that a lot of it has to do with cost of credit, for example. If you ask yourself at the moment, what is the going cost of credit? You are looking at about 32%. And so if a poultry farmer is borrowing at a 32% rate from the commercial bank, certainly it will be quite difficult. The infrastructure that is required, you need energy, you need some basic infrastructure like roads, some basic infrastructure like water. I'm looking at the poultry farming sector, for example. And all these, you can tell that although as a country, we are investing in capital expenditure, building roads and all, we have not been intentional in linking productive activities to some of these infrastructural development. And that is something that policymakers ought to take a critical look at. When you look at the textile industry, the key challenge they face is competition from imports. Because we know that, for example, if you look at GTP, they have the reputation of producing quality products. But the moment they invest in innovation and put their products out there, you have traders who are taking their samples abroad to go and bring in similar patterns at very cheap rates. And the question you ask is, how are people able to produce at such lower rates. Importers are able to bring them in, pay duty, and still be able to sell at a lower price than local producers. And the bottom line is the business environment. The environment within which these firms are operating is quite difficult. So they would produce, but at the end of the day, their costs are high. So even imports come in at a cheaper rate. And most of these imports, honestly, some also come in on some of the products that they bring in. So these are the issues. I think that if we are very serious about employment creation, the very low-hanging fruits are agro-processing. What are we doing? And light manufacturing, like textiles. And you look at the poultry sector, the reputation is there. On average, every Ghanaian wants a locally produced chicken because they know that it is of good quality.
That's right.
You don't find our birds as huge as turkeys and other things because of all the chemicals that they are given. But the demand exists, but people cannot afford because the farmers are also producing at very high cost. So these are some of the issues that I believe the government needs to tackle.
Right.
And particularly looking at the challenge that the global environment is in, I think that it is time for our government to take a break, pause, and look at the key issues that are affecting these very light manufacturing, agro-process activities that we can easily turn around in a year or two to make some meaningful gains in the employment generation and even on our imports bill and also as a country in terms of revenue generation and all that.
How much of the revival of this broke economy is tied to an indigenous industry, industrialization?
So when you are talking about industrialization, for the context of Ghana, we are not looking at very sophisticated things like car assembly plants and all that. Those are good. But you also know that based on the way the economy is structured, we do not have a comparative advantage in those. That does not mean that we cannot venture into those activities because of technology and all that. But the very low-hanging fruits are, what are we doing to agricultural produce? Are we adding value? If you look at a country like Kenya, for example, horticulture, globally, roses and all the things you find abroad are exported from Kenya. Why can't Ghana tap into its own resources and also do certain things that we are comparative? In
our supermarkets in Ghana, we are consuming South Africa groceries, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. You have, what do we call it, carrots, you have lettuce and all other things, cherry tomatoes, that are all imported. And so you see, when you look at all these things, it makes you ask, are we very, very serious about the drive to create jobs locally, about the drive to add value, the drive to be self-sufficient? These are issues that we need to. And when you look at the example of the Nigerian situation, you can tell that it is not rocket science. It is something that can be done. Over time, when you look at the interventions in the agricultural sector, it has always been giving fertilizer, free fertilizer to farmers and all. Can we be a bit more intentional as to, for example, targeted credits at affordable rates to smallholder farmers, lend them to large-scale producers, assist them so that they are able to build capacity, produce, and be competitive on the market? These are some of the major challenges that needs to be addressed.
It would look like very little, if any at all, has changed as far as the problems confronting our economy are concerned. We're taking a quick break. When we return, we will begin with looking at how much of government or state intervention in introducing bans like happened in Nigeria for the, rice industry, may be necessary? And what can the local producers also do to take over the commanding heights and bring down the prices of their products so that the poor who can afford the foreign but can't afford the locally produced will also not have a justification to continue to want to have that taste? We'll be right back.